Hello and welcome to Paper Lantern History with Samyukta Nair. Today's episode is the first in our Sikh Beauty series, where we will be exploring different trends in women's beauty that actually had a negative impact on their health. Today, we are going to talk about the practice of foot binding that was observed in China from the 10th century to the 1940s and 50s, till it was abolished by the Communist Party. There are various theories regarding the origin of foot binding. The first theory is that during the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period in the 10th century, a court dancer bound her feet with strips of cloth and performed a dainty dance that greatly impressed the emperor, resulting in several women of the court adopting the procedure to win favor. The second theory hints at the Buddhist legend of Padmavati, whose walk was described as so graceful and delicate that a lotus sprang from her every step. A third legend talks about the Empress Da Ji, a woman famous in Chinese legend for her evil and sadistic deeds. According to legend, she was born with a club foot and ordered that the feet of all the daughters of noble families be bound in order to attain a similar shape, so that her own feet would become the standard of beauty. Whatever the true story of its origin, foot binding soon became a widespread practice among the social elite and gradually became popular among all social classes. It was mainly practiced by Han women, and many efforts were made across the centuries to abolish it. 17th century Manchu emperors, the rebel Hakka leaders of the Taiping Rebellion, and Chinese missionaries in the 1800s all made attempts to get this practice outlawed and to make women embrace the more natural foot. In fact, Manchu women began wearing a narrow shoe on a short platform called a flower bowl shoe that emulated the walk achieved by foot binding. A walk with small, mincing steps that was believed to tighten the inner thigh and pelvic muscles and was therefore considered highly erotic. However, the practice of foot binding was still going strong as it was considered a part of the Han identity, and efforts to end it did not succeed till the communist uprising of the 1940s and 50s. The highly idealized 3-inch lotus foot was seen as an erotic trophy by men and a means to a prestigious marriage and social status for women. While the practice of foot binding was initially restricted to the nobility, peasant families began incorporating it to help their daughters make advantageous matches. The lotus foot was so sexualized that men often drank out of the tiny lotus shoe, declaring it a toast to the golden lotus. In addition to its sexual connotations, foot binding also ensured that women were mostly confined indoors and couldn't run away from abusive marriages. Foot binding was usually performed in the winters when the young girl's feet were likely to be numb from the cold, either by her mother or a professional foot binder. The girls themselves were around 4 or 5 years old, as the bones in their feet were considered smaller and more malleable at that age. After soaking their feet in a warm concoction of herbs or even animal blood, their feet were bent, arches broken, and toes curled up against the sole. Toenails were clipped very short or even removed entirely. The foot was tightly bound with long strips of cloth, and often bits of broken tile or glass were inserted into the bindings to cut into the flesh and cause bits of it to fall off. Toes were often lost to gangrene, but this was seen as a plus as it further reduced the size of the foot. Many women succumbed to gangrene and septic shock as a result of this practice, and a study among elderly Chinese women with bound feet revealed that they had lower hip bone and backbone density than those with unbound feet and were thus more prone to fractures in case of a fall. By the 1940s and 50s, the Communist Revolution was changing the way of life in China. Women could no longer lead a sedentary life at home. They were expected to work in the fields and often walk long distances, which was very difficult with bound feet. To bring an end to the practice, Communist Party workers would pay visits to houses, and if they discovered a woman with bound feet, they would hang her bindings in the window to publicly shame her family. The practice soon came to an end, and in the late 1990s, the last factory producing lotus shoes was closed. As of the 21st century, the only women in China with bound feet are grandmothers in their 80s, 90s, and 100s. While this painful 1,000-year-old practice has come to an end, it is by no means the only instance of women harming themselves for the sake of beauty. Click like and subscribe if you would like more videos on the interesting and gruesome facts behind the history of women's beauty.